So we are now broadcasting live, members. If I can just remind you to please be on mute when you're not speaking and to raise your hand in the relevant screen so that we know when you want to speak. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Planning and Development Board. I'm not aware of any apologies for absence or members away on official council business. But if I could ask if anyone else is. Councillor Downs, you're indicating to speak.
Can I send apologies for Councillor Deakin, please?
Thank you very much. We'll stick those in the minutes. Thank you. Does anyone else have any apologies? In which case, members, we move on to disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest. Does anyone have anything that they would wish to disclose? I can't see anyone indicating, so we'll move on. Members, it's my very sad duty to, I'm sure you all know, but former councillor Lorna Dervick's passed away a little while ago. This is the first meeting of the planning board since her funeral. Lorna was a great friend to the borough and an exemplary member of the planning board. I'm sure she is very widely missed by everyone who knew her. I think it's only appropriate if we stand for a moment's silence to show our respect. So members, if you could stand, please. Thank you all very much indeed. Members, I'd now like to go back to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is number 3 for determination of planning applications. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know from the report, back in the earlier times this year, because of the first lockdown, some emergency powers were taken by the full council in order to make some temporary arrangements for the determination of planning applications. That was effectively a consultative procedure, as you will see from the report. In fact, only one particular item went through that procedure, and we've now had 3 virtual meetings, this being the 4th since that decision. So therefore, it's my recommendation that in fact we revert back to having planning board meetings through the Teams format as we have this evening, rather than to continue with those particularly temporary arrangements, which are always going to be for a short period anyway. Since the report was written, clearly we have now had notice of the second lockdown, but I don't think that prevents us from continuing with board meetings virtually, and therefore the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is that the arrangements that were adopted back in May not be continued.
I would like to propose that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Would anyone else wish to speak? In which case, I'll second the recommendation. As I can't see anyone else indicating to speak, Mr. Tobin, could you take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Clues.
For.
Councillor Dervix. Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Hayfield.
For.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis,
4.
Councillor Lees,
4.
Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Mawson, Councillor Moss,
4.
Councillor Parsons,
4. Sorry.
Councillor Phillips,
4.
and Councillor Simpson.
4. Thank you very much, members. I take it that is carried unanimously. We now move on to the first application to determine this evening, which is application number 450 for Woodview at Westwood Road in Atherstone. We have a speaker, Tracy Traherne. If you'd like to stand by while Mr. Brown introduces his report. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It'll only be a short, if I can get the slide to move forward. As you can see from the heading here, it's a retention of a garden room in a rear garden in Atherstone, Westwood Road, Atherstone. Just go show you the plans. This is the main line, railway line. Westwood Road is this particular length of highway here. Tavern's Lane is here. And you can see frontage of detached houses, large detached houses. The industrial premises referred to in the committee report is at the rear here. As you can see, the building is shaded here at the back of Woodview, which is there. In terms of the actual building itself, then the bottom line here shows you the elevations, and the top up here shows you where the house is, the garden room is in relation to the house, which is down here. The dimensions are referred to in the report, Mr. Chairman. As you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, we're recommending approval. The reasons are outlined in there, and I have nothing further to add to the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Hearn, welcome to the Council House. I'll just hand over to Mr. Tobin, who will talk you through the process for public speaking, but you're very welcome to join us. Mr. Tobin.
Good evening, Mr. Hearn. You will be given shortly a 3-minute period in which to address the committee in relation to your application. I will tell you in a moment when the time has started, and then I'll give you a reminder when you have 1 minute remaining. And so if you are ready to speak, your time will start now.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I've put together a piece I've written, so I'm just going to read it to you. We're seeking the approval for a retrospective planning permission for the retention of a garden room at the far end of the rear garden. I understand through your conversations and from the report, pages 4A, pages 1 to 5, that there are concerns regarding its potential impacts and that there have been 4 objections submitted in relation to it having been built. Number 1, to enable residential use, and that it is too close to the industrial premises and therefore inappropriate. If I firstly refer to the objection that it's being built to enable residential use, and also refer to 4A, page 2, to enable where it states that objections are to the building itself, aren't to the building itself for its possible use. Here it states that it's only 22 square metres, that the building is too small and only suitable for incidental use as a host property. Our intended use of it is simply as that, just a garden room in the warmer summer months and for relaxation purposes, reading, having breakfast, just chatting with friends if they come round, and storing the garden furniture in winter months. If I refer to the objection of it being too close to industrial premises and thus inappropriate, the frontage of the garden room faces towards the rear of the host property, not to the industrial buildings at the back, so neither ourselves or the industrial property owners would be affected by each other. Both of the 4 points reflected on the findings in the observations on page 4A2. I've gone on to read the recommendations on that page, and that planning, as you've said previously, be granted with 2 conditions. I've read your conditions and I fully agree with both points 1 and 2. that protect in the interests of residential amenity. And as I said previously, it's just purely a garden room for social activities.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you, that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Traherne. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? Would anyone like to ask a question? In which case, as there is no questions, Mr. Hunt.
Could I come in?
Sure.
Yeah. Mr. Hearn, what was the reason there was no planning application for this building?
We didn't think we needed to have it. We just built a garden room simply and purely for a garden room, and that was it. But it was just raised by an objection by a neighbour, and then subsequently we had to have planning permission from after a visit with the planning officer.
The reason I'm asking is because obviously you've applied for planning permission because there's a considerable amount. I know it's incidental to this, but there's a considerable extension to the host property.
What happened originally, we've had an alterations and renovations on the main house, and a neighbour raised an objection to that, so we had a planning officer come out to check that. That was all investigated and everything was done and correct and approved, so that was signed off. But he saw the garden room in the garden and asked us to have planning permission submitted for it. So that's how we came about submitting it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? In which case, Mr. Hearn, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Members, who'd like to start the discussion? Who would wish to speak first? Councillor Phillips.
Yes, Chair. Merely to move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jarvis.
I'm not a great lover of retrospective planning applications. In this case, obviously I've read the reports and I see the recommendations, but I personally would like to see the conditions tightened so there couldn't be any other possible use, such as business or anything like that. So I'd just like if Mr. Brown could take that on board and just tighten the conditions. I know it's covered with residential possibilities, but also cover it with something like business possibilities as well, because it is a substantially sized block.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can take that away and look at it and revise the condition or add a condition accordingly on that.
Thank you very much. Members, any other comments? Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I'd simply like to second Councillor Phillips' proposal, actually, that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips and Councillor Parsons, can I just check that you are happy within your proposal to accept what Councillor Jarvis was saying about an amended condition?
Yes, seems reasonable to me. I'm happy with that.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank
Fine
you.
by me, Chair. Yep.
Thank you. Do any other councillors wish to speak? Or any other proposals? In which case, members, I've received one proposal which has been seconded that planning permission be granted with an additional condition relating to usage. Mr. Tobin, could you take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Clues.
4.
Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
You're still on mute, Councillor Jarvis.
Sorry, against.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
The meeting. Thank you. Councillor Mawson. Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons,
For.
Councillor Phillips,
4.
Councillor Simpson.
4. Members, so that recommendation is carried and plan permission is granted. I would just explain to Mr. Hearn, I know you'd put your hand up to speak, but sadly, I'm not allowed to ask you to speak again after your 3 minutes. So I wasn't, if you will, being rude. It's just there isn't a facility for you to speak again. I'm sorry. Members, we now move on to application number 324 for land at 113 Church Road, Hartsell. We have 2 speakers on this, the first of which will be Councillor Pearson. If you could stand by, Councillor Pearson, while Mr. Brown introduces his report. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just run through the slides first, because I can explain where we are going from them. Right. Looking at the site plan first, you can see this is Church Road in Hartshill. The centre of the village is down here below the plan, and the site goes up here to the Hartshill Castle. The actual lane up to the cemetery is here, and the premises, as you can see, is right on the corner of Cemetery Lane and Church Road. This is a residential frontage on both sides. The existing elevation, front elevation, is here on the top left, and in terms of the ground floor, you can see here there's a central staircase, and the floor is divided up into several rooms. These are used as a hairdresser's shop. Upstairs, then there's a residential unit, an L-shaped floor space like this, with the central stair coming up. And these are the roofs of the single-storey extensions at the back on ground floor. The intention, as you can see from the proposal, is to remove the internal walls to create a larger space, the staircase having been moved across to here, as you can see. Upstairs, the staircase would come here, come onto the first floor here, and you can see here, there's again enlarged living space at the top, which takes over the whole of this floor area. And then this would be the roof plan for the small extension at the rear, which you can see here. So, Mr. Chairman, the report explains why the application is recommended for approval. We have had objections, as you can see from the Parish Council, and I suspect the speakers will relate to that. But you can see from the report that it's our view that they carry no weight. And there are 3 or 4 reasons on page 4B7 which outline the reasons for that particular view. I'm quite happy to answer questions further on, Mr. Chairman, after the speakers have, after you've listened to the speakers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. As I said, our first speaker is Councillor Pearson. Councillor Pearson, welcome to the meeting. Mr. Tobin will explain how we work from here. Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. You'll have in a moment 3 minutes in which to address the committee. And what I'll do is I'll tell you when your time starts, and then I'll tell you again when you have 1 minute remaining. Your time starts now.
Right. Good evening. Our objections centre around road safety and traffic flow as a result of staff and customer parking making conditions for other road users and pedestrians hazardous. There have been numerous complaints with photographic evidence from parishioners regarding the dangerous parking associated with this business before this proposed expansion. The reasons can be summed up as follows. Customers and staff park to be near the hairdressers because they don't want to get their hair wet or windy when they come out, on the brow of a hill, which is in breach of the highway code. Leaving vehicles in this dangerous position causes an obstruction on the road, meaning traffic, including buses every 20 minutes, have to overtake them blindly as they go up the hill, as you cannot see what's coming over the brow. There have been times when the bus cannot pass and cars have had to reverse dangerously down the hill. At busy times, school exit times when traffic is heavy, emergency vehicles would struggle to pass due to queues built up to pass the parked car obstruction. The access road to the cemetery is next to the hairdressers. The cemetery manager has had to go into the hairdressers several times to ask for cars to be moved, as hearses have been unable to turn due to parked cars, causing unnecessary upset to grieving families. Complaints have also been received by pedestrians due to vehicles parking inconsiderately, causing obstructions for wheelchair users and pushchairs. The footpath is also particularly narrow there, so it's dangerous for pedestrians, and especially with the inability for traffic to flow freely, it's really dangerous with all the manoeuvring that therefore has to take place. As someone who lives in Hartsell and has seen how dangerous the road conditions are with the parking, I find it incredulous that this is being recommended and would urge you to conduct a site visit before approval. A delay until the possibility of the yellow lights or clearway sign has been could be explored by NWBC. If this could be done and there was something to stop them parking illegally, something to stop them legally parking like that, this situation could be resolved.
Thank you very much, Councillor Persson. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? I don't see any hands, so Councillor Persson, thank you very much indeed. Members, our next speaker is Mr. Paul Lyon. Mr. Lyon, welcome to the planning meeting. Mr. Tobin.
Good evening, Mr. Lyon. Similar to the last speaker, in a moment you'll be given 3 minutes in which to address the board. I will tell you when your time starts, and then I will remind you when you have 1 minute remaining. Your time starts now.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak this evening. The applicant has now operated from these premises for over 10 years, and until 2019, application has not received any complaints in respect of the impact of a business on local highway safety or the amenities of the area. The salon continued a similar use previously operated up to 2005, and before 1996, a string of retail services occupied the property all the way back to at least 1949, when at that time it was a butcher's. It is acknowledged that the impact of any use, commercial or domestic, on highway safety requires careful consideration, and it has hoped that councillors will see that the applicant has positively responded to the highway objection lodged against the previous proposal through withdrawing the scheme and applying for a more modest and balanced development. That said, there is no current highways objection listed against the current application, and highways have not sustained their objection from the previous 2019 application. The applicant is conscious of the need to be a good neighbour, and although the planning system indicates the use is acceptable in principle in such an environment, she encourages use of sustainable modes of transport for many of her local customers. Most of them are local and within walking distance. The analysis of street view photography over the last decade has supplied to officers demonstrates there's no incidents of unacceptable parking activity in the vicinity of the premises on Church Road or Castle Road. The parking survey supplied with the previous application also confirms this is the case. Infrequent recorded road traffic incidents in the area also indicate there is no link between these incidents and any on-street parking associated with this proposal. The ground floor layout provides around 45 square metres of usable floor area for the salon use. The proposal would increase this by just 4 square metres, insufficient to bring about a material intensification of the use of the premises, but that should be some comfort in this. Officers also acknowledge that the internal changes do not require planning permission. Evidence has also been supplied to officers to demonstrate alterations to the ground floor roof and the rear, along with the alterations to Cemetery Lane elevation, would not require an application for permission. Essentially, the application is applying for the first floor extension and the modest alterations to the shop front. Workable alternatives exist, which would be undertaken in the event of a refusal, but would lead to greater expense and delay in bringing the business back to normal following the lockdown earlier in the year. Given the devastating impact of the pandemic has had on small independent businesses over the last year, supporting local traders is ever more important to sustain a mix of uses necessary to support the day-to-day lives of the people that live there. It's hoped that the committee will agree with their officers this evening and grant me.
Your time ends there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lyon. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to go back to the speaker's comment about most people walking there. And what I'd like to say is that evidence from existing use. If you're a resident of Hartsleys, that is not the case, and the fact that the salon was able to relocate to Camp Hill temporarily would indicate this is true. So I'd like to ask the speaker how the applicant is going to control the parking. Where does the applicant expect people to park? And in response to note 7 on the recommendation, which says we need to draw unobstructed access to the cemetery at all times, how is it proposed that that will be enforced? I'd be grateful to have an answer, please.
Sorry, is that to myself?
It is, Mr. Lyons, yes, please.
Oh, right, okay. I think what we've got to look at is actually that there is no objections from Highways for this application, and actually the work that we're doing, this doesn't actually come into it. Obviously, I live in the area also, so I also know that, you know, a lot of the things as far as parking traffic in that area is probably more related to the school. Now, there's lots of other businesses in the area, and we should really be supporting local businesses, you know, and especially somebody that's investing money into the area and into her business, but for the local community. Obviously, also the parking doesn't come into the planning. You know, when we're looking at what constitutes the planning application and what we're putting forward, the Highways do not have any objections on this, and you know, we're not looking to apply for planning permission to open up the space that's there at the moment. This we can do under permitted development. What we're actually applying for is the second story and the changes to the front of the shop elevation.
Chairman, may I come back, please?
Sure.
You've still not answered my question on note 7, which is a note on the recommendation. How is your applicant going to ensure that the access to the cemetery is unobstructed?
This is not something that's really the applicant's, you know, it's not for her to deal with. Obviously, as far as the applicant's concerned, there are no restrictions to the comings and goings at the cemetery at the side. There's no parking there at the moment. So, you know, it's about the people that use the shop to responsibly park on the highways. And, you know, she does encourage for her clients to use a sustainable mode of transport. You know, a lot of the clients that she has in the area are local residents and therefore would walk to use the salon. Obviously, the client can't control where for instance, an individual decides to park their car. That's not her responsibility as a business.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Councillor Lees, did you have a question?
Yes, for over a year now, I've been trying to get residents in the area places to park because since the school has put a new turning circle in place, they've stopped several residents from parking. So it's quite difficult at most times to park. But since that's happened, it's even worse. Now, I've been trying with the schools, negotiating with the schools to try and get parking for these residents, but unfortunately at the moment we can't. Also, as far as the cemetery goes and Cemetery Road, I'd like to ask a question. If this planning permission goes ahead, where do you expect to put scaffolding? Because there's no room now to get hearse and workers' cars by. So where do they expect to put the scaffolding? We've had to, as a parish, we've had to have restricted parking signs put up because customers at the store were actually parking in the cemetery, which is a no-no because we've had times when we couldn't get funeral vehicles in because of parked vehicles. So I'd just like to know where they expect the vehicles to park when this business expands.
Mr. Lyon?
Oh, well, I guess, you know, from a building perspective, obviously they're not demolishing the existing structure that's there. Potentially, we're going to reuse the wall of the building. So we will then create a cavity on the inside of this building. So the wall will remain outside. Obviously, there is a doorway to block up, but obviously it's only a small doorway. Most of the work then, the materials will come into the shop because the space will be opened up. Once the space is opened up, then we construct the walls from the inside. Scaffolding, obviously the 2-storey section is actually set quite a bit back into this building, as you can see from the plans. So scaffolding will actually be erected on the top, and access can be then through the existing building. So there'd be no need to put scaffolding on the outside or the area to the cemetery. I think what we've got to remember is that, this is only 4 square metres that we're adding to the existing building. So it's not intensification of the use. If we were adding a large square meterage to the property, maybe that might be a consideration. But obviously planning have put this forward for approval based on this, and also, the client can carry out the works to the ground floor area under permitted development to clear out the walls and complete the extension. The area again that we're looking for is the 2-storey section and moving the windows and doors to the front. I guess we again come back to the fact that the local community should be supporting businesses. This is really tough, difficult times at the moment. We should be getting behind businesses to support them as much that supply jobs to local people, not destroying them.
Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mute switch. There we go. Mr. Lyon, I think I'm right I heard you say that the property has been used for business purposes for some 10 years now. Is it? Did I get that?
So it's been used from this is nothing new for this property. This property's been here since 1949 when it was originally a butcher. So there'd be probably more people coming and going to the property. Previously it was a hairdresser's operated up until 2005. And a string of different retail services from 1996. So, the business has always been there, and it's quite a long-standing premises used for sort of retail services. The comings and goings were probably a lot more, and certainly they had the same comings and goings probably at the previous salon. But there was nothing lodged against the previous businesses of any issues with highways or intensification of use or anything like that. So.
I mean, the actual extension is 4 square metres, as you said.
It is.
And that wouldn't seem to me to represent a huge intensification of use. And essentially the rest of the alterations seem to be concerned with the residential aspect of the building. Have I got that correct?
Yes. So there's 4 square metres that we're adding to the premises on the ground floor. But again, this is something that could be carried out under permitted development rights. So the client can carry this out and open the space up with the walls under permitted development without the need for any planning permissions. So it's the upstairs space that we're adding to on the first floor, where we're basically making the space as a flat for a residential property a little bit more usable, whereas they've got a kitchen, living, dining area, and we've moved the bathroom just slightly outside. But the extension is shielded from every direction, so you can't really see that extension because it's so minimal, and it's placed on the rear of the property. Obviously, the shop front, we're looking to change the windows and doors, but in doing this, then it gives us a chance to sort of update the windows and doors that still keep the character and appearance of the building, but give its longevity then for maybe another 50, 100 years.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lyon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lees, did you have a further question?
Yes, Chair. The business shut down before COVID and moved to Camp Hill. And my worry is that 200 yards away, we've got another hairdressing shop, and less than a quarter of a mile away, there's another hairdressing shop. So I'm a bit worried why the business shut down and moved, and now all of a sudden she wants to come back again. So when we've got 2 businesses within a quarter of a mile of the shop. So
first of all, I guess this is a planning application, and so therefore, we're looking at it in terms of planning. My client can't control whether another retail business opens up down the road, that's just the way things are. There's lots of hairdressers next door to lots of hairdressers in lots of areas. Secondly, the only reason that the shop was initially closed was that the client was looking to carry out some renovations to bring the property up to date, I guess, to have an opportunity to be able to provide extra insulation in floors and walls to make the property more energy efficient. The property probably hasn't been touched for, it's probably since 1949. So obviously this work can't be carried out while the client is working in that premises. So she took the decision then to temporarily rent a premises slightly down the road, and so that she could renovate the property and then move back in. Now, initially, this was only going to be for a 6-month period, but obviously the added complications with the planning application, the fact that it's come to committee, has delayed this massively. So this now is now rolling on to more like 12 months. So obviously, the client feels that she's been in that shop now for over 10 years, working in the local community. She loves the local community and the people that are there and the people that she works with and serves as a hairdresser. And the area and the property have been good to her. So she wants to stay in that area where she's comfortable and continue her business and continue it to grow.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. I can't see any other members are indicating to speak, so thank you very much indeed for your comments.
Thank you.
Members, who'd like to start the discussion? Who would wish to speak first? I think I've got Councillor Parsons first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate that a business can cause problems in terms of parking, but this business has been up and running for 10 years. Yes, there's been a temporary move, all for perfectly sound reasons, as it would seem to me. And actually, this planning application is about really some fairly minor adjustments to the property. It seems to me that we can't deliberate on the problems that already exist. We have to look at the problems that might come from this planning application, and I personally can't see that this generates any additional problems. I would propose that we accept the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parsons. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, to some extent, Councillor Parsons is correct. The trouble is that within recent history, i.e. history of when cars were in use, this use of this building has evolved without any specific planning permission, just by continuous use. And I know that is established and there's nothing that we can do about that. I accept that. But this application has brought to a head something that is a real issue in Hartshill. Now, I am absolutely stunned that the Speaker said there have been no complaints. That is absolutely untrue. There have been complaints, lots of complaints, and mostly from the parish council, who own and run the cemetery, and they have complained constantly about the cars being parked on Cemetery Lane. So for a start, that doesn't add up. Also, when there was a previous application, which is actually referenced in the papers, where the business wanted to extend upstairs. And at that point, Highways had lots of issues, and it was withdrawn because of the Highways issues. And Councillor Pearson's actually gone through most of them. But just to sum up, cars parked on Cemetery Lane, which means the hearses cannot get to the cemetery. There are cars parked right on the corner. There have been accidents with people trying to exit Cemetery Lane onto Church Road, and they can't see because of the cars being parked. And of course, the issues about them parking on the pavement where people can't get past. So there are lots of Highways issues which were well recognised by Highways when the previous application came in. Now, I realise that application has been withdrawn, and so what's being suggested now is residential accommodation upstairs. However, the moving of the staircase downstairs will cause, will give the opportunity for more space, therefore more customers and possibly more cars. And I absolutely do not accept the fact that the customers walk there. The fact that, as I'll repeat, the fact that the salon has been able to move to Camp Hill and presumably take its clients with it, and now wishes to move back, would indicate to me quite clearly that most of it is done by car. So for those reasons, it is really very disappointing. And I go back to the point, and I know it's not specifically planning, but it is in the recommendation. It's recognised that the blocking of Cemetery Lane is a real issue. And there's been no response from the Speaker about how that can be maintained. And for the person who owns the salon to just shrug and say it's not her responsibility is just not acceptable. This is part of our community which is causing huge issues. There is nowhere to park. And so that's why this is causing so many issues, when really it is, you're quite right, Councillor Parsons, it is mostly about a residential extension, but actually it's brought to a head issues that have been there for a while. And I am finding it very difficult to support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Lees.
Yes, Chair, I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Bell. Living close to the area, I disagree with most of the things the Speaker has said. There's not a lot of walking custom. It's mainly driven. So to that end, I'd like to propose a deferral for a site visit, please.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to second Councillor Parsons, but if the board's wish to do a site visit, then I'm happy to go along with that. So I do think we need to have a look at this, perhaps, because I think we're asking someone to solve problems that are not their problems, really. I mean, the business is there and the business will continue. Perhaps if there was some double yellow lines or some parking restrictions would be best, but this is not in the gift of the applicant. This is in the gift. If the parish council is so active, I mean, speaking as a parish council myself, we've lobbied and in a number of places for double yellow lines, and surely this would be more appropriate than sort of trying to close someone down. I'm happy to second Councillor Parsons' recommendation, but if the board wish to for a site visit, I'm quite prepared to withdraw it.
Thanks very much. No problem. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. I sit somewhere between both sides. I can see all the points of view, but the majority of the discussion has been on parking. Nothing about the building, or a negligible amount about the building. It's always been about parking. Parking is not the remit of the applicant by any shape or of the imagination. So I would like to see this revisited by county, who are responsible for the parking in that area, and maybe, as has been suggested, they will say, okay, we'll put yellow lines down there. But refer it back to County Council, who are the ones that are actually responsible for the park. Sympathy for the applicant, because we can't make the applicant responsible for something that their responsibility is someone else's. So I would like to see, whatever happens, that County Council, it's referred back to them to see what they propose, because at the end of the day, they are the parking authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. I've heard a proposal and a second of the planning permission is granted as per the programme. I think I've also heard a proposal for deferment for a site visit. Ordinarily, members, as you know, when we have a site visit recommendation, we go straight to that vote. I'd like to do that to be clear as to where we're going with this. But Councillor Bell, I can see you're indicating to speak as well.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to second the proposal for a site visit and a deferment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, members, we clearly have a recommendation for a site visit. I'd like to take a vote on that first, if we could. Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Clues.
For.
Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Hayfield.
For.
Councillor Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Jarvis.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Moss.
You will mute Councillor Moss.
Councillor Moss. Chair, if I return to Councillor Moss for a moment. Councillor Moss. Councillor Parsons.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Simpson.
For.
And
Can I just say,
Councillor Moss.
Mr. Tobin, you've become very quiet. I don't know if that's generally the case. Sorry to interrupt.
Apologies, I don't know if that's any better.
Yes,
Councillor
much better.
Moss.
Thank you.
Brian Moss for.
Thank you very much, members. I'd say that's unanimous, and so we now defer consideration of that application for a site visit. Mr. Brown will be in touch with everyone to make the necessary arrangements. Given that that item has been deferred, we'll move straight on to application number 190 for 19 Dordon Road, Dordon. We have a speaker on this item as well, Mr. Ian Ritchie. Mr. Ritchie, if you could stand by while Mr. Brown introduces his report. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just run through the plans first, so I can explain the reports with those on screen. This is Dordon, the main road coming up from Dordon, Fairfields Hill down to Polesworth here. The site is edged red. The frontage property here is, as you can see, a detached property in a line of other frontage properties with a fairly large back garden which extends behind these other frontage properties and also backs onto Birchmoor Road, which is there. The proposal is for 2 bungalows at the rear of number 19, which is here, the frontage property. Access, as you can see, would come off Dordon Road here, between number 19 and the next door property here, running to the back, where existing buildings would be demolished and 2 smallish bungalows would be applied here, approved here, together with a garage, as you can see here. Parking and manoeuvring would be here at the rear. As you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, much of the content of that relates to the history of the site, and in particular to 2 appeal decisions. There have been 4 applications here on this site, and gradually over time, the proposals were reduced from 4 detached houses to 2 small single bungalows, as you can see from the plans. Now, there have been 2 refusals at appeal, dismissals at appeal. One earlier on for a larger number of units, and the one more recent one just a few weeks ago for exactly the same proposal as you now have in front of you. And the copy of that decision is attached to the report, and there are references in the report to various paragraphs in there. The main issues which the inspector found were related to the impact of the development on the residential amenities of the 2 frontage properties, particularly number 19, also the impact of the development on the character and appearance of the area, and both those issues figured in the previous appeal. As this proposal is the same as that which has been dismissed, the recommendation is for refusal. If members are to consider approval here, they may want to take legal advice from Mr. Tobin during the discussion. But my view would be there would have to be significant differences on any proposal here, which is to go against the appeal dismissal from a few weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Ritchie, welcome back to the Planning Board.
Thank you.
Mr. Tobin.
Good evening, Mr. Ritchie. In a moment, you'll be given 3 minutes in which to present your application to the board. I will tell you when your 3 minutes start, and I will tell you when you have 1 minute remaining. Okay, your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you, Chairman and members and Mr. Brown. This application, as mentioned by Mr. Brown, is a resubmission of an earlier application that was also refused. The resubmission was invited following a request by members, and an appeal was made following the earlier refusal, which was submitted to comply with the appeal deadline of that particular decision. As mentioned, the inspector has considered and dismissed the appeal and identified that the main issues are, one, the effect on the character and appearance of the area, and two, the impact on living conditions of adjoining residential properties. With regard to the second issue, the inspector concluded that there were no adverse impacts on the neighbouring properties, but did express concern about number 19, the applicant's own house, in terms of noise and visual intrusion. Mr. Brown has, I understand, circulated some photos of number 9 showing corner windows, which are a particular feature of this property. The windows actually facing the driveway can be isolated from impact by sound using secondary glazing and an acoustic fence, which would also provide privacy from overlooking. There are currently no objections from highways, and with regard to the first issue raised by the inspector, the applicant is struggling a bit to understand the concerns about the character and appearance of the area. Number 19 differs from the other properties on Dordon Road in that it has a substantial rear garden area, small field you might say, in which there is already a large garage and a workshop building. The applicant now finds this substantial area of land too large to maintain as a garden. View down the driveway reveals the end elevation of the large garage building, which blocks any views from beyond.
1 minute remaining.
And of course, there is the adjacent school buildings. The proposal is the replacement of the existing buildings with 2 bungalows in this large area of land, where substantial hedgerows exist, varying in height from 3 metres to 8 metres. The applicant's aware of the implications of the inspector's decision, but feels that they've had some encouragement to pursue the course they have so far. And as long-term residents of Dordon, and given the uniqueness of this site, the eclectic nature of the settlement, having some difficulty understanding the concerns over the issue of character. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ritchie. Members, does anyone have any questions for our speaker? I don't see any hands, so Mr. Ritchie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Councillor Osborne, you indicated earlier that you'd like to speak on this issue. Would you like to talk now or later on?
Yeah, I'd like to talk now, if I may.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I've known the area. I've lived here for 55 years now, so I know the area very well. Dordon Road especially. I went to school in that area. Each of the houses that make up that road are very, very different. There is no real unique character to any of the houses. They're all made of different brick, different elevations, some front onto the main road, some have got a larger garden onto the main road, some have got a shop at the front, some have had a converted shop made back into a house. So there's been all sorts of different, what you'd say, a unique character hasn't really existed in my lifetime there, because it's changed so much. So I don't really understand the part of the unique character being an issue, to be honest. What I would try and suggest to the committee is that if it turns out that it is a contentious issue, that the committee defer to actually have a site visit so they can go and see the area for themselves. I think Mr. Rich is right. It is more or less like a small field. It's a lot larger area than a normal garden. So I would like to propose that to the committee, whether anybody would be interested in doing a site visit so we can all make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Members, who'd like to speak first?
I would if I could.
Off you go then, Councillor Humphries.
Well, I'm very concerned. I'm surprised actually that this last time that it's such a change from the original application. This isn't a developer trying to make a lot of money on the side. This is the people that are going to live there and the family's going to live there, and they want to downsize because we're all getting older and these applicants are no different. Based on what Councillor Osborne's saying, I actually think we need to see. I think we need consistency. There's many places all over the borough and in this area for back garden development. This isn't necessarily a back garden. There's a massive great workshop there. There's a fallback position they could redevelop that. There's a garage there, etc. So I would like to propose, as a sitting member on the committee, that we actually defer any decision tonight to have a site visit to actually see exactly what was said earlier. I can't see where the damage to the local area will take place. So if I could, let's have a site visit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for deferral for site visit?
Councillor Jarvis, I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much. So members, in line with our normal practice, Mr. Tobin, could you take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell?
Sorry, Mr. Tobin, this is for a site visit. Can I just clarify?
It is, yes. It's a proposal for a deferring site visit.
Thank you. And then 4.
Thank you. Councillor Clues?
4.
Councillor Downs?
4.
Councillor Hayfield?
4.
Councillor Humphries?
4.
Councillor Jarvis?
4.
Councillor Lees?
4.
Councillor MacDonald?
4.
Councillor Moss? Councillor Moss?
4. 4.
Councillor Parsons?
4.
Councillor Phillips?
4.
Councillor Simpson?
4. So members, that's unanimous, and that item then is deferred for a site visit. We now move on to a consultation application, number 14, for land to the east of Middle Bickenhill Lane. Mr. Brown.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just run through the slides again, and I'll speak to those. This is the final piece in the jigsaw of all the planning applications that have been submitted in relation to the HS2 station, which members have seen before in various guises. In this particular case, the plan is a bit misleading because north is at this end on the left and south is down here. The A45 runs down here, as you can see, and the Toby Carvery is on Stonebridge Island, which is this island here. The F452 runs up here, Melbick Nurseries is here, and the M6 is further up onto the left. The proposals are effectively to redual the 452 and realign it, also to give access into the station from the 452 via this new loop, and also to reconfigure the arrangement here at Stonebridge Island. Now, there's a bit more detail. So in terms of the entrance into the station, and here it is, Packington Lane at the present time is this arrangement here, as members are probably more familiar with. So it's on the south side of that, and as you can see, much larger. And then the Stonebridge Island is this particular feature here. The Toby Carvery is in this particular quadrant, and as you can see, it is to improve movement all around that particular junction. And as I say, you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, this is an application which has gone to Solihull, and we've been consulted upon it, as in previous occasions. The recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is consistent with other resolutions made by the council in respect of these applications.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members, over to you. Who would like to speak? Councillor Clues.
Yeah, I'd like to make to mitigate the losses of any damage to the greenbelt by selective replanting of native trees and plants, because obviously we'll lose that, and just make a recommendation that they may include this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clues. Councillor Hayfield.
Just a question for Mr. Brown, please. What's the fate of Coleshill Pool, which of course abuts onto this Stonebridge Island? It's an ancient natural water thing. It's been shrinking over the years, but does that survive?
I think I'll mute.
I think it's part of the SSI, Mr. Brown, isn't it?
Part of the SSI. I will go back to Solihull, Mr. Chairman, and find out that, because clearly it's in the Solihull area. I'll go back and find out for them and contact Councillor Highfield as a result of that.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Highfield makes an absolutely pertinent point, Mr. Brown. Personally speaking, I accept all the difficulty with this being a HS2 related application. But if this were to lead to the loss of Coleshill Pool, I would have thought the board might wish to object.
I'm just looking at the plan again, Mr. Chairman, and I want to check with Councillor Hayfield. Coleshill Pool, is he talking about what's known as Coleshill the Bogs, which is just south of the M6 motorway? This island is at Stonebridge, which is much, much further to the south. Can we just clarify exactly which site Councillor Hayfield is talking about?
It was the bog, so if I've got the wrong island, my apologies.
Okay, well, I think what we'll do, Councillor Hayfield, is we will check, just to be triply sure, and if it is, then we'll find a method of getting back to the board. But on the assumption that it's not, we'll carry on if that's okay. So, members, does anyone have any additional comments to raise on this item? I'd certainly like to emphasise the issue raised by Councillor Clues and by Councillor Hayfield, that it's important to maintain the local area and to protect the greenbelt as much as we can. So if we could just emphasise those points that are raised in the recommendation, Mr. Brown, that would be helpful. If no other members wish to speak, Mr. Tobin, could you take the vote? And members, we are voting for or against the recommendation printed on page 424, which is that we raise no objection. Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Clues.
For.
Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Hayfield.
Abstain.
Councillor Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Jarvis.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Moss.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
Abstain.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Simpson.
For.
Thank you.
So, members, that's carried, but please take my assurance that if we have got any of that issue that we need to come back to you on, we certainly will. Members, before we move on to the next application, which is number 166 for the Heart of England Conference Centre, I should tell you that there's a concern over my prior engagement with this application, and given that, to ensure correct standards of probity and even-handedness, I'm going to withdraw from the meeting for this application and Councillor Jarvis, as Deputy Chairman, will chair this section of the board. I will take no further part in this conversation nor vote. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. This is application number 166 by the Heart of England Conference and Events Centre for the erection of a wedding venue extension to Conference Centre, creation of amphitheatre and pagoda for outdoor wedding ceremonies. Mr. Brown, if you could take this item.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before I show the slides, I've received 2 further objections from local residents supporting the recommendation of refusal since the board report was published, and both the Flongley and Corley Parish Councils who are not available to actually speak to the board tonight, but they both reiterated the objections which were already recorded in the report. So let me just run through the slides first then, Mr. Chairman. General location plan with the M6 motorway running along the top. For Longley is some distance up here to the top right. This is the Meriden Road out of Longley, and the boundary with the Solihull Metropolitan Council is just around about here. Members will probably be familiar with the centre. It has been the subject of a large number of applications and also been several visits. Wall Hill Road is the road that comes down here to Corley, which is here. The bulk of the range of buildings with the old hall here and the range that is already converted is here. The lake, which members will be familiar with, is here, and the woodland is up here. The proposal is to remove a marquee, which is in this general location, and add an extension, a permanent extension, with including a link. The link, as you can see here, ties in with the existing buildings and arrangements which are here. This link will basically be toilets and small accommodation, with the main function room being this rectangular building here. It also will open up onto this area of open space here, leading to a small amphitheatre with a pagoda here for wedding ceremonies. And then in terms of the appearance, this is the existing building, runs from here down to here. The link is this particular area here, and then one of the gable ends of the extension is here. This is the elevation of that extension facing outwards towards the little pool, which was seen on the previous slide, and this is the other side elevation with the existing building here, the link, and the gable end of that extension there. I don't intend to go through the report, Mr. Chairman, in great detail. It follows the normal sequence which you're familiar with, or members are familiar with, in terms of looking at green belt issues. First, to decide whether it's appropriate or inappropriate development. In this particular case, my conclusion, this would be inappropriate development. We also then have to look at other harms that might be caused, and the report identifies those. That harm side of the balance then has to be balanced against the applicant's considerations, and if this is to be approved, then that balance has to show a clear difference between the benefits and the harms. In this particular case, Mr. Chairman, I do acknowledge that the applicant's considerations do carry weight. They did do in the past. There's similar considerations which he's mentioned before in previous applications. They do carry weight. It's a question of whether or not there is a clear difference between the weight given to those considerations and the weight given to the combined harm, which in this case is greenbelt and other harm. In this particular case, Mr. Chairman, for the reasons given in the report, we consider the greenbelt harm is substantial and would outweigh those considerations. I'm happy to answer any questions later on, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I believe we have one speaker, Mr. Harman. Mr. Tobin, if you could take the speaker, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say we do have 2 speakers. We have a speaker for and a speaker against. Yeah. So, as is the usual way, we'll take the speaker against first, which is Ms. Burren, and then the speaker for, which is Mr. Williams. So, Ms. Burren, you'll have 3 minutes in a moment to address the board in relation to the application. I'll tell you when your time starts, and then I'll give you a reminder when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you.
Your time starts now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking on behalf of local residents of Philongley and Corley who have concerns regarding this application. Granting planning permission within Greenbelt for a permanent extension to be built on the same site as the existing marquee, because it is merely a replacement building, sets a dangerous precedent. If one was allowed to erect an unauthorised temporary structure and then utilise its very existence to obtain planning permission within the green belt, then the floodgates would open for everyone. This application is certainly not for a replacement building, in our opinion. If planning permission would be granted, we would also be interested in knowing where the marquees would be resited. The design of the pagoda is not considered to be sympathetic to the rural location. If planning permission was granted, such a feature would add to the increased urbanisation of the venue, and this facility is not low impact. The addition of shepherd's huts and pods already add to this clutter. In terms of the construction, we note that the wood utilised would be sourced from the woodlands within Hart Park. The applicant states himself that areas around the fringes of the woodland still merit semi-natural ancient woodland status, but it is these very fringes that would be most affected. Previous planning history at this site has led us to expect the unexpected, and there are many examples of this. We are concerned that the area left following tree felling may well lend itself to a possible further construction site. Once trees are down, they cannot be put back to the detriment of wildlife, flora and fauna within this beautiful greenbelt area. There have been significant noise issues in the past. Weddings such as these add to the noise levels. The weddings, such as proposed by the applicants, have a lot of guests, usually over 600. They are traditionally organised by close friends and families, along with professional wedding organisers and planners. We've noticed that several outdoor events held at Hart Park are organised by third parties, and in our experience, this seems to negate the applicant's responsibilities, e.g. the Mudfest. These weddings often have fireworks as part of the celebrations, which have previously caused problems. There have been significant noise issues on this site, which are ongoing and must not be underestimated. This proposed structure will attract the larger weddings that are traditionally held outside. Loud music and drumming cause particular harm, and the neighbours are already experiencing this. Wedding events normally take place at the weekends when there are no council representatives available to experience the nuisance, as we have found to our detriment. The amphitheatre, by definition, an open-air venue for music, entertainment, etc., can only add to the existing noise and disturbances to the residents. If the board would be minded to accept these proposals and attach conditions to the applicants in their determination, we are not convinced they would be complied with, and they are almost impossible to monitor.
Your time's finished.
Thank you.
Members, any questions for? I can see no hands. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams. I believe you're muted, Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, I believe you are muted.
Chair, Mr. Williams is showing as being present in the meeting. I don't know if he's able to unmute himself.
Mr. Williams, are you able to unmute yourself?
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Williams.
I can't see myself. I was on the screen for a moment. It's gone now. Okay. Well, good evening to you all. And I've been asked to speak on behalf.
Mr. Tobin.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Mr. Williams. It may be that you've missed something with your connection problem. In a moment, you'll be given 3 minutes in which to address the board. I will tell you when your 3 minutes start, and then I'll also say when you have 1 minute remaining. Okay, your time starts now.
Right, thank you. Good evening again. I've been asked to speak on behalf of Heart of England, and I refer to the officer report, including the requirement to, which is in the report, to remove the marquee. Clearly, the refusal recommendation and the removal of the marquee will have a significant effect upon this business. The event and conference centre industry, along with the hospitality business, have, with national guidance since COVID,
COVID-19 being one of the hardest hit centres. This business still exists and where possible has kept people employed, recently engaged in some 30 unemployed actors for about 6 weeks. The report needs to be considered in the context of meetings which have taken place over the last 2 years, which involve discussions to the replacement marquee and other matters. Since the application to provide a replacement barn and the outdoor vision of outdoor seating arrangements, the client has held direct talks with planning officers and held meetings with the enforcement officers, etc. The client was led to believe this was his best approach. There are emails which indicate the enforcement officer was in direct contact with the planning committee and matters would be resolved. All meetings and promises have come to nothing. I myself represented Heart of England a meeting with Mr. Brown, the chairman of the planning committee, on the 15th of November 2018. I quote the email response to that meeting. Without prejudice, the location of the marquee replacement is acceptable, being close to the existing range of buildings and thus reduce the impact on the openness of the green belt. Notwithstanding these comments, the design of the marquee replacement is supported as it does tie in well with the appearance of the existing buildings and indeed that of the permanent hotel and extension. It concluded with the following. In conclusion, therefore, we're looking for a comprehensive approach to the whole of the site, and that does require movement on the hotel permission and the resolution of the outstanding enforcement matters.
1 minute remaining.
I was asked after the failure of the enforcement officer to resolve the enforcement issues, despite various promises made, to work with the planning department. I did so, and to my knowledge, only one item is standing, and this subject is now subject to an appeal. I'm sorry to say the report for you does not reflect previous discussions, nor does it give a fair, balanced approach to assisting business through these difficult times. The operation of Heart of England provides the authority with business rates of around 50,000 a year, and this blow, if you follow the recommendation, will have a significant effect on its ability to survive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Members, questions for Mr. Williams? At the moment, I can see no hands. Is that correct?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you very much.
Open to members for comments. Can I see any hands? Councillor Phillips.
Yes, Chair. I'll move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Anyone wish to second that recommendation?
I'll second it, Dave Humphreys.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. So it's proposed by Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Humphreys, that we follow the recommendation of refusal. Is that correct? Mr. Tobin, if you could do the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Clues.
For.
Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Hayfield.
For.
Councillor Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Jarvis.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Moss. Councillor Moss.
For. Sorry again.
Councillor Parsons.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried.
The planning application is refused. Thank you. Give Councillor Simpson. Welcome back, Councillor Simpson. Over to you. Would you like to unmute, Councillor Simpson? Councillor Simpson, you're muted.
Sorry about that, members. I was trying to get back onto the mic screen to do it. It just shows we're all as guilty of muting as everybody else. Members, we now move on to agenda item number 5, which is the progress report on achievement of the corporate plan and of the objectives. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report is quite comprehensive, and there are a couple of appendices there which show corporate plan and performance indicators. If members have any questions, then I'll do my best to try and answer them for you.
Members, who would like to grill Mr. Brown on his performance? Councillor Clues. It's your turn to be on mute, Councillor Close.
Oh, sorry. Right. It's just a question on the progress of Britannia Works, POP 2019 0180 and 0183 on the 4th of November 2019. Can you tell me where are we with this?
So, Mr. Brown, I think this relates perhaps to NW 157C, the processing of applications within 8 weeks.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The planning permissions have been granted for the partial demolition of Britannia Works, together with the rebuilding and conversion of the remainder to a care home. Those permissions have contained several conditions, a lot of pre-commencement conditions, and those particular conditions have now been all approved. We understand, in fact, I can report to members that 2 further applications have come in recently. They've not yet been validated, but they will be done later this week for further demolition work at the buildings. If those particular applications are approved, then we have every understanding that work will then continue. The applicant is still very, very keen to continue with the development, and we have been working with him in order to try and make a bid for extra funding for the works, to construction works, as well as to assist with the demolition. So therefore, Councillor Clues, the proposals are still very much on track.
Councillor
Okay,
Hayfield.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Clues.
I'd just like to congratulate Mr. Brown on knowing his road traffic islands better than I do.
Thank you, Councillor Hayfield. Councillor Jarvis.
Question for Mr. Brown on Peel House. This is another application that's been going on now in excess of 6 months, and it appears from what reports we've seen is that highways have objected, there's heritage objection, but there's been no determination of that application. Could you tell us the current status, please?
At the present time, the applicant is trying to overcome the highway objection. And as the site is within the built-up area of Atherstone Manchester, the principle of development on this site is acceptable, and therefore it's not a straightforward policy reason for refusal here. We're giving the applicant every opportunity to come back on these technical issues through receipt of amended plans. I agree that is being delayed, and I can chase with the case officer during the week to find out when those amendments might come in. I think it might well be time, Councillor Jarvis, for us to draw a line here and give the applicant a limited time in which to get those amendments to us.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a general question about the processing of planning applications. Is it because there are complications which have to be resolved, similar to the one you've just explained, or is it just the sheer weight of things coming through the door? And my understanding is that we're fully resourced in planning. You may want to correct me if that's not right. And so I suppose my question is, I don't see the flood of planning applications getting any lighter anytime soon. So have we got any chance of meeting this objective with our current resources?
Councillor Bell, first response is to say that we are fully resourced, we're fully staffed, and that's been the situation for the past 12 months or so. We have suffered over the past 2 or 3 years with vacancies, but we're now a full establishment. Secondly, the number of applications is quite significant, and that matches or reflects the situation nationally. It's perhaps been reported amongst the planning officers' societies, where a large number of applications have come in during the summer. There are a lot of minor applications, but that means that we now have caseloads for case officers of 35 to 40 applications each, whereas we've normally had 25 to 30. So everybody is under pressure in that respect. That will lead to delay. However, in most cases, we try to get extensions of time. And as you'll see from the performance indicator report, that has been very successful when we deal with major applications. And that's the only reason why we've hit 100%, is because we get agreement with applicants to extend the time periods. It's more difficult with minor applications, but generally they do agree to extensions of time. But yes, Mr. Councillor Bell, we are very, very busy.
Yeah, so Chairman, if I just have a follow-up to that. I mean, my question was really for out of concern for our planning officers, because getting extensions of time, that's a really good way of dealing with it. But of course, it only delays the problem, because if the number coming through the door is the same, the delays are going to have to get longer for you to meet agreed deadlines. So I haven't got an answer here. I'm just expressing concern about the workload on our planning officers, and having a target which looks like it's just putting pressure on you, but without any hope of reaching it. So this is maybe something we need to discuss offline, but I just wanted to register a concern for the amount of work that's coming through the department.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Ms. Bell, I have to say, it does seem to me that given an increased number of applications and certainly an increased caseload per officer, that we do need to review this position.
Well, first of all, can I thank members for what they're saying about the division and the amount of work that we have to go through. I think, as Councillor Bell said, it's perhaps something we can take up outside the meeting with the Chief Executive and the management team of the council, because other divisions will obviously have under similar pressures as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. If you could take that as an action point on the agenda, please. Members, any other comments that you'd wish to raise at this stage? In which case, the item is for noting. So, if you're happy, we'll note that and move on to the next item. Agenda item number 6 is an appeal update. Mr. Brown.
Well, again, Mr. Chairman, this is a matter of report. All these 3 appeal decisions have already been circulated to members before tonight. Unless there are any questions on any of them, I'll just move the recommendation that they be noted.
Members, any comments or questions on the report or the 3 appeal decisions that are being reported?
Councillor Jarvis, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Do we have a seconder? I'll second it. So
I'll second that, Councillor Clues. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Clues. So again, as it's for noting, I can't see anyone is against it, and we'll simply note it if you're happy with that. Members, we are about to move into private session, but just before we do, I'd just like to echo Councillor Bell's comments about the stalwart nature of our planning team and the significant amounts of work that's being undertaken, and to offer, I think, our collective thanks to Mr. Brown. If you could pass those on to the team, it does matter, and we do care about how much work people have got to do. And I think, given all of the issues with COVID, all members of the staff are under pressure and working hard. But particularly, I think, given the amount of increase in workload for the planning team, we'd like to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll ensure that's passed on to the members of staff, both the planning officers, Dorothy's team, and the enforcement officers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips, you were about to say something, I think.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chair. I'm so happy to second your recommendation there.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Members, we now, I think, need to move agenda item number 7, which is that under section 100A (4) of the Local Government Act 1972, members of the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business on the grounds that it involves likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by section 12A of the Act and further outlined in the paper in front of you. I
move.
Thank you. Thank you. And do we have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Clues.
For.
Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Hayfield.
For.
Councillor Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Jarvis.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Moss.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Simpson.
For. As that's carried, could we